Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. Quick video today addressing a topic that came up under one of my photos on Instagram. So while I'm thinking of it, please go over and check me out on Instagram. Give me a follow there. I'm trying to build that little, I won't say community, but that avenue up. So it's at Instagram. So it's at not.so.obvious.watches. Go check me out there. But the question came up under a photo I'd put of myself wearing a 32mm vintage Alpina. So I think it was this one or a watch much like it. And the comment was that the commenter was a little surprised that me, a fairly big guy, I'm 194 centimeters, weigh unfortunately north of 100 kilos and a 7.5 inch wrist, that I was sort of able to rock such a small watch. I think it's a 32mm watch, and that this guy, who's probably about my size, was saying he struggles with anything less than 40. And that made me think about the notion of watch sizing. And I did some thinking, did some research, made a comment in Instagram, but I actually thought maybe that was a good start for a video, which is what we're going to do now. So I did a quick search on YouTube, and I will not pretend that I looked at every single possible YouTube channel on the issue of sizing watches, but I looked at a whole bunch. And one of the things I would say is that they're almost all wrong. And that they're almost all wrong because they start from a premise which is wrong in the first instance. And the premise they all start from is that there is somehow a right size for you. That there is a right sized watch for you. And that all you have to do is follow some rules about sizing and proportion, and you will find the right size watch for you. Now that's patently wrong. And the thing I would say that clearly demonstrates that there is no such thing as a right size is the fact that over the last couple of years, what we would have said was a right size 2 years ago is not what we would say is a right size now. Sizes amongst the fashion conscious, at least those within the watch community, have got a little smaller. A lot of men are aiming for smaller watches. If I'd have made a video 2 years ago talking about all the sorts of things like the guy from Real Men Real Style, I think that's the name, talks about with a sense of proportion as though there's some sort of magic number or magic ratio, I would have said I clearly needed a 42. But if I did exactly the same video today, it would probably be a 40 or maybe even a 38. So what that says to you is that number can change at all tells you that there is no such thing as a right size. So that's the first thing to get through. Rule number one, there is no such thing as a right size for your watch. Okay, so if there's no single right size for your watch, how do you get a watch that is the right size? That seems a contradiction. The point is, a watch is not the right size because it has some magical set of proportions. A watch is not the right size because it fits on your wrist in a certain way. As I discussed, how a watch sits on your wrist is really just a matter of fashion and changes from day to day, week to week, year to year. What you need to ask yourself before you size a watch, before you choose it, is what do I want this watch for? What is its purpose? And I don't mean in terms of diving or flying or jumping out of airplanes, because none of us really do that. What I mean is when you buy this watch, more importantly, when you wear this watch, what are you hoping it will be? Are you hoping it will be big and flashy and that everyone will see it? Are you hoping it will be discreet and intriguing so it might catch the eye but then demand that someone look at it more carefully? Do you want it to be elegant and slide under a cuff and only peek out occasionally? Or do you want it to be something which, if someone sees it, they're instantly wanting to see more and you want them to see everything about that watch as easily as possible? Decide what you want that watch to be, and then the sizing is, the question becomes about size. Does that watch in that size achieve the aim you want? So I'll give you some examples of my watch collection and how my idea of sizing works for me. And as I said, 7.5-inch wrist, biggish guy all round. So I have a kind of a standard sizing system, a standard size, which is for my standard watch. Nothing particularly special going on in my life. I just want a watch which I enjoy and is, if you like, from a sizing point of view, a little bit vanilla. My size could be, for that kind of watch, as little as a 39mm Mueller Glasuta as I have here, or it could go as high as something like about a 44mm as I have here for my Alpina Heritage, sorry, not Heritage diver, my Alpina Sea Strong diver, and ballpark in the middle, 42mm Baby Marine Master. So 32 to 45mm, 44mm, bit of a range there, a 5mm range, but really I have found the difference isn't that huge for a standard watch. Really what drives what is good, bad or indifferent in that size range for me is more about just the styling and the colouring, and the shaping can make at least as much difference as some sort of, you know, arbitrary diameter, because it's all about the look. There is no arbitrary number that makes it work. There are other times where I feel like I want to wear something that's massive and blingy and huge and show-offy and garish. And for that, I have my 48mm glycine. And thankfully it comes in bronze, because when I'm going big, it's a go big or go home. I don't think I would ever buy like a normal steel watch in 48mm. It just doesn't really make sense. So a 48mm watch in bronze, or a 48mm watch, if I could ever afford it, in sapphire, would just be glorious. If I'm going big, that's what the watch has to be. A 48mm steel watch would be far too big and pointless, and I would never own. Likewise, I'm perfectly happy going very small. My 32mm Alpina 4, for example, is a brilliant watch and I love wearing it. Why? Yes, it's very small, but I don't want, the idea of wearing that watch is to wear something that kind of catches your eye, isn't absolutely normal, and draws them in. And only really a vintage watch can do that. And so I would compare that to, say, my Timex Marlin, which is 34mm, so larger than the Alpina, and yet too small. I never wear it. I've actually given that to my daughter. She wears it now. So how can a 34mm Timex be too small, but a 32mm vintage Alpina be just right? Because when I'm wearing the vintage watch, I'm after a certain look. I'm after something which is a little bit intriguing, a little bit enticing, that draws someone into it. And a vintage watch can achieve that. But the Marlin is just an ordinary watch, and so it has no particular interest. It's not particularly it doesn't draw you into it. And so, being 34mm, it's simply a small watch, and that's all. And so without that extra intrigue that the vintage vibe and the patina brings, there's no point wearing a watch that small. And just as there's no point wearing a steel 48mm watch, there's really no point wearing a new 34mm watch. Whereas there's all the point in the world of wearing a vintage 32, or in fact I can go down to a vintage 27mm watch. So to wrap this up, rule number 1, there is no single set of perfect proportions for a watch. There is no single right watch size for you. Rule number 2, a watch is the right size if at that size it achieves what you want. If you want to have a watch which really stands out, which draws the attention, which looks a bit clownish, which looks a bit outrageous, then a 48mm bronze, heavily patinaed watch is the perfect size watch for you. If you, on a different day, want something that's small and enticing and intriguing and kind of draws people to look harder at what you're wearing, and then when they start to see that it's a bit older and a bit more interesting, get more interested in what you're doing, then a 32mm or even a 27mm vintage watch is also the right size for you. Even in the middle, there could be all sorts of different sizes that you want depending on the look that you're after. So that's it. Be mindful about how you want your watch to look. Know what kind of impressions you want that to get, and then buy a watch, wear a watch that achieves what you want. So that's it. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. If you hang on a little while, a card will come up. You'll see my Instagram again. Please give me a follow over there. You'll see email address if you want to get in contact with me, and I'll see you later. Bye.